Hi guys, in this video I'll show you how to check your fluids in your car. This car is a 2007 Impala with 3.5 motor. Now what I show you here pertains to every other vehicle. They're all pretty much the same. So this is your brake fluid reservoir right above your master cylinder here, and there's a line over here that says max on it. Now your brake fluid should always be at that line. If it's not, it could be one of two reasons. One, your brake pads are low, and which is causing the fluid to go down, so it's a good indicator to tell you that you need brake pads. Or you have a leak in the system, so you're gonna have to figure out why that's low. It's very important. Also, I'd like to change this fluid whenever I do brake pads because I'm already there and might as well bleed the system while you're there. And first thing I would do is you go to your dollar store, pick up a nice little turkey baster, and open this up and suck as much as you can out of this thing and pour in all the way up to the max line and start bleeding away. And usually it tells you, like this is .3, usually tells you on the cap, or check with your manufacturer's specs to see what you need to put in here. If you don't have the specs, you can always go to alldatadiy.com. That's another avenue you could take by to see what your specs are for your car, and also give you all the other specs. So that's how you check your brake fluid. One more thing I want to mention about brake fluid. It could have a high copper content in it, which is also very bad. Copper is very corrosive, and it can ruin your ABS system or other brake components. And what happens is these lines for the brake fluid have copper lining inside them, and the copper tends to deteriorate and ruins your brake fluid and any components you might have. Brake strip is a name of a strip that you can actually Google that, brake strip dip. There are test strips for brake fluid, and it measures the copper content in them. So that's a good way also to figure out if you need brake fluid, depending on your copper content. It's very important. Next thing is your transmission fluid. It's right there, your dipstick. This is the only fluid that your motor has to be running, and the motor has to be at operating temperature, so does your transmission. So this would be a good thing to check if you come home, if you're coming home from work one day, if you have a nice trip and your car is all heated up and everything. So don't turn the motor off and pull that out. This fluid should be changed if it's automatic. You should change it around, say, 30 to 40,000 miles. Sorry, 30 to 40,000 miles if it's an auto. And if you're changing the fluid, I would also recommend changing the filter. You just take the pan underneath off and change that filter. If it's a manual car, anywhere from 30 to 60,000 miles, you would want to change that. Also, keep in mind these figures I'm telling you. This is a general rule of thumb that I like to go by, but you could also, like I said, always go by your manufacturer recommendations on that. Now let me show you what this looks like. And always get in the habit when you pull this out, clean it, then put it back in, and do it again and take it out. Because the fluid, there could be a fluid in the dipstick tube that could throw off your readings. So take it out, clean it with the rag, put it back in, and redo it. Now I'm not going to do that because my motor is off and it's been cold. Now if the motor is off, you have most of the transmission fluid from your torque converter drains back into your transmission pan if you have an automatic, so your reading is going to be very high. Another thing here, make sure it's pinkish for the most part, and smell it. If it's dark and it smells burnt, that means your clutches are going and your transmission's on its way out. This here, another thing to note is, it's very important to clean it and put it back in and take it out a second time to take a look at it, because sometimes there's transmission fluid in the dipstick tube, like I said. Also, when you take it out the second time around, always look for the lowest level on this transmission dipstick. The lowest level is what it should be, because like I said, this could be some residual fluid inside the dipstick tube. So let's go for the lowest fluid and just turn it around and take a look at that. So Another thing here, this dipstick tube also tells you what kind of transmission fluid to put in it. It says it right here. And this one says Dextron 6 fluid only. And when it's running, it should be by the cross hatches over here, or you should see like holes. You see where the holes are, or you can or lines. It all depends on what kind of car you have. But like I said, flip it back and forth and check the lowest level, and that's where your fluid is. Now, in order to add fluid to this, you would need like a transmission type of funnel, something like this. So you pop it in there, then fill it up, or something like this. You basically need something long to be able to fit in there. And next thing I want to talk about is your engine oil. Now the motor has to be turned off to check this, and you just pull it out, clean it, put it back in, then take it out again and record where your level is at. And this one should be pretty much, you see two holes here, the top hole, that's where it should be at. And you check the lowest level also on this. You flip it back and forth, see where the lowest level is. And this should be clear, the fluid. If it's very dirty, then check how many miles it's been since you changed it. And it also tells you like this one, particular one tells you SA 5W30. And be careful with that, because you could have different types of engine oil in there. It could be synthetic, fully synthetic, mixed blend synthetic, or regular oil. So always check to see what kind of oil you have to put in there. This is your radiator cap, and I have a video on this. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is the coolant tank for it. And there's two levels on here: full hot, which is all the way on top, and full cold on the bottom. If they're not at that level, if your motor's full hot and it's not the actual full hot level, it could either be a faulty radiator cap, or it could be a bunch of things, like I said in my video for that. Or if it's all the way, if it's not the full cold level, that could also be a radiator cap. Or if it's not the right level, you could have air in the system, or what have you, or leaks. So you might want to check that out. And always open this when the motor's cold, or else you're going to burn yourself. This here is your power steering fluid. Now this one, be careful when you open it. You don't want to get dirt in here when you open it, because that's going to screw up your power steering system, and you're going to have problems. So be very careful when you take this out. Just pull it out, and this particular one, it should be at full at the top where the cross hatching ends. Now test this fluid with the motor off, and always observe, like I said, the motor should be closed, the motor should be turned off, and if you want to change, be careful when you go to spots and they tell you to flush this. It's usually because they want to take money out, get money out of you. I wouldn't flush this, but I guess a good rule of thumb is maybe from 50 to 60,000 miles. If you want, take this off, take the turkey baster, suck as much as you can out of it, and just put fresh fluid in here and just top it back up. I've seen cars that go 180,000 miles without a power steering change, so use your best judgment on that. But better to change it more often than to hold off on it. I would recommend maybe 60,000, and always check with the manufacturer specs on that, but sometimes they don't tell you when to change this. So I've had a lot of questions about that too. Another thing also is your differential fluid in the back. If you have a rear wheel drive car, you would want to change that anywhere from 50 to 60,000 miles. And your transfer case fluid also, if you have a 4x4, anywhere from 50 to 60,000 miles, depending, also aggressive use also on all these fluids. If you have a car you aggressively use a lot, say for example as towing, if you tow a lot of vehicles, or it's a high performance vehicle, you might want to change those fluids more often, because they wear down quicker in those purposes. So I think that's all I have to say. And if you have any questions, you could ask me underneath. Actually, one more thing: your transmission fluid. Be careful when they want to do a tranny flush too, because that is always another ploy that they try to get you on. A nice real quick tip before I leave you guys is locate your transmission fluid hoses and take one off and put it in a bucket. Turn the car on for 2 or 3 seconds, and if the bucket, if you see transmission fluid squirting out of that, that means that's the hose you want off into your bucket. If not, then you switch to the other hose. It should be 2 hoses. And as you're doing that, turn the motor on again and let it all come out. And as that's coming out, pour in transmission fluid. So you could that's how I would flush your motor. Sorry, transmission with transmission fluid in it. What else do I want to say? Also, one more thing here I forgot. This is your windshield wiper fluid in this car. It's always indicated with something like this, and you could just look inside there to see if it needs any. This actually needs some, so I'm gonna go ahead and fill that up. And I think that's all I want to say about this. If you have any questions, you could check the box underneath. Sorry, you could leave me a message and check the box to like me underneath or subscribe to me. Thanks for watching and take care.